Woodoo, 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 woodoo.
Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of the Woodoo Podcast. I'm here with Kai Newton, who is a wonderful soul, an animator and filmmaker. And he's here to share his beautiful insights with you all.
Hello.
Good
I am
evening,
here.
sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's actually 4 p.m, but hey ho.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. First off, I had a little listen through a bit of the first episode the other day, and then the entire south of England had a massive power cut. So,
Yay!
Rural
yeah.
life.
Rural life, living in country, living in sticks.
Down it sticks.
So, I wanted to ask you about the spiritual content of your Blobs series.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Tell me a bit about them.
So
these are animations, by the way, just guys to let you know.
So these are little kind of crude animated shorts, I guess, and they were made from little excerpts of audio that I got sent by friends. So obviously, one came from you, Harry, which was for Hadron, and I just recorded some random audio for an episode of a series I did with my other friend Harry, not to be confused with you, who was on the first episode for a year in review, and essentially, because we were in a very we were in a lockdown, we weren't allowed to go out and all this, but so I was in a place where I was trying to kind of think of how to show off my day without just filming the room again, and not the same four walls. So I thought, why not animate these little crude shapes, with little faces, talking about existentialism, and Root bringing up the fact that he finds solace in the fact he could just make another arm, or Hadron talking about how he could just create universes at will. And it was quite fun because I was also kind of down on animation as well, because I'd not done anything in a while, and I'm a workaholic at heart. I'm trying to get better at it, and I just thought doing this very simple little thing with audio from friends that would make them laugh would give me a little bit of clarity.
It's been really interesting to see your journey, especially since you did the not Days of Future Past, the Kaiser Future Past. What did you call it?
Yeah, Kaiser Future Past. I initially called it Past Kai Future Kai because it was inspired by a fellow content creator called Bing, who did Past Thing Future Bing. And just for anyone who doesn't know, it's essentially just a time capsule thing where a year apart I talk back and forth with myself through videos. But yeah,
and it's so interesting because it happened you did it at the onset of the COVID crisis. So
yeah,
you started before it was even really a thing, before we even thought about it. And it was interesting that you chose that year to do it because you saw how your perspective changed and how your mindset changed as the whole year went on, or 2 years.
Exactly.
Was it?
Yeah. I think it was. Yeah, it was 2 years. So I did the entire thing of 2020. Not every day. I did like every other day, because then all the videos kind of slot in, And yeah, like you say, I started it at the beginning of 2020 because it was always it was a fun year to look at the numbers of, and it was a very fresh thing. It was a new decade, and I thought, okay, I've always wanted to do something based around time travel or just the concept of time and whatever. And when it all started, those first 3 months just felt like normal life. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to travel and I'm going to get to film all sorts of stuff. And I was very optimistic about the future replies. I was like, oh, okay. Because initially we went to a VidCon in London, so we got to meet a lot of creators that I now work with and work for. and I was told, hey, you can edit some of the promo material for next year, and I was super excited, and I was like, oh, what have you been doing? What have you been doing in the future? And then the reality hit us, and it I think I described it the other day. 2020 and 2021 to me felt like 2019 ended, and the years were on like a vinyl record, and somebody just picked up the needle, and they dropped it back on at the beginning of this year. And it feels a bit like a blur, which is why I'm quite happy that I recorded it, you know? Like, I have it there as like a bank of information that I can go back to if I need to.
I mean, it's a real milestone in your life, I think. It's got this, you know, recording something and spending that much time to capture a moment in your life is always going to have this, you know, you had one chance to do it and you did it kind of feeling to it. But I think it rings especially true with the time that you did it. It's such a fascinating view of seeing somebody as well going through that journey and having this, you know, autobiographical nature to it, and this constant dialogue, and seeing how you changed and seeing how your mindset shifted. It's really, really fascinating. And I'm looking forward to when it's been fully released and being able to watch through it.
Absolutely, because initially, as I am with most things, I was overly ambitious. I was just like, oh yeah, I can get these edited. But then, obviously, when we got into that crisis, you know, we weren't allowed to go out. So I now had fewer and fewer things to film, to make like into dynamic storytelling, like devices, I guess. And it became like a thing of everything got backlogged. Everything still is backlogged, if I'm completely honest. But I've gone less from, okay, I'm going to get these out on the exact day that they're supposed to be, and more so, I want to kind of nurture them. You know, I want to nurture every episode of that series and make it something I'm proud of, and make it something that I can go, okay, what was the episode where I went to see my mum again? You know, I can go back to that and it feels unique. It's not just, oh, here's another video of somebody sat at their desk talking about boo-hoo, my life is shit. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to swear on this, by the way?
Yes, swear as much as you like. Use as many swear words as possible. No, that's a joke.
I'll try not to. I mean, just on that point, not to be too expletive, of course, I did notice that you were saying the kind of open dialogue and stuff of the series, seeing how I change. I think getting to a point where like I felt like my life was being controlled, I started expressing myself more with words. And I like because swearing is just part of the English lexicon, right? I never used to do it much before because I didn't find a reason to do it. That was always my thing. Like, Harry constantly tried to get me to swear in college, and he was like, come on, do it, come on, please. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do it. Part of me was just playing with him, and I was just like, nah, I'm not going to do it. But one of the things that I said to him is, I don't feel like I need to. But being through what we have been through, I began to swear more because I was like, I need to figure out. I had to figure out a way to express myself that wasn't like kind of like like overly diplomatic. I wasn't just like, oh well, maybe this. I'm like, no, they are screwing us over, you know. And I did like some of my videos, you know, I stare into the lens of the camera, and I am I allowed to use the C word here?
Yeah, you're allowed to use all the words.
I just looked into the camera after a bit of silence, and I was like, I said like, I won't say names obviously, but like, I was just like, you are just a cunt. And I was just like, that just felt so. It just felt so like
cathartic.
Cathartic, and like it was like a release. I remember the first time that I said to you, I was like, "Oh, I have this and whatever," and you were like, "Yeah." He said it. He's not dealing with the regime anymore.
I was so happy for you.
It was like a proud dad moment.
yeah, because it was. I remember before COVID. I was always like, I love Kai. I think he's great. I was like, but I did always think he's a bit buttoned up. He needs to loosen up a little bit. He needs to kind of let it flow a little bit. And then as that whole kind of COVID thing, and it's like at first you were like, everybody needs to really button up and to get through this. And I was just like, I don't know, man. And then later you were like, actually, fuck this shit. And I was like, hell yeah. And it really, I think it was that kind of forging process for you. It really kind of faced you against some shit and made you kind of re-evaluate.
Yeah, like that was the there's a word for it. What is it? It's like that's the
crucible.
Word. I guess like that's the thing that kind of set it off, And I feel so much looser, and I feel a little, I feel a lot less stressed, definitely. Because it's all pent up, this kind of stuff. A lot of people just kind of went with the wind, and they were like, oh, we have to do this, we have to do that. And I'm thinking, well, no, we've gone through it enough. Like when I went, like going to see my parents was a big thing for me, because I live like 200, 300 miles away. It was this kind of, it was this calculated thing that I was thinking. I was like, right, I've been through enough of this now. I feel I'm all right. I just want to go up and see him, because I did not feel comfortable with like going to see my mum, who I'd not seen in 2 years, and just awkwardly standing there, because I felt it would be no different than calling her, And by the way, it felt great. It absolutely felt great. Coming up in July to see family, see you, we filmed some stuff. That was one of the best moments of my entire life.
Oh, man.
Because we've been through a lot, and it was great. It was great. We got to do all sorts of stuff that we didn't get to do before, and it opened my mind a bit, or a lot. In fact, it opened my mind a lot. Like you say, I loosened up. I started thinking, no, this isn't just a one-way street. There are ways that you can get past this kind of stuff, and you have to look out for yourself whilst also looking out for others. You can't just drop yourself in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been really interesting watching the shift. It's also, there's more of a genuineness in the way that you speak now. Because I think what can happen to people is people are so, what's the right word? Not attached, but so concerned about how they impact the environment around them that they kind of suppress themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult balance, because you don't want to become this sort of raging narcissist that's just imposing your will on the world. But there is, you get to this point of inner freedom where you do you, if that makes sense, and you are cautious, but you're not paranoid. I think there's so many people that are in this like lockdown paranoid state where they're so worried about how they affect the world.
Yeah. And like it's just so interesting. Like over the course of time, a lot of people have kind of opened up as well. Like, I mean, I'll admit, like you say, at the beginning of the whole COVID thing, I was incredibly buttoned up. Even just before that, I was very much just like, okay, right, let's trust these guys. Let's see if we get through it. And over the course of time, I was like, that's not adding up. That's not making sense. If you can do that, why can't I do this? And I think I just started seeing the inconsistencies. Like as a person, I hate when people, like when there are people who have inconsistent morals, right? So like they tell somebody off, or they berate or degrade somebody for doing something, and then they go and do it. You're like, well, where was that a second ago? It has to be, if you're going to impose that on someone, it has to be fair. Either go one way or the other, or let somebody live free. And that's one thing that always bugged me, and I just became looser after that. I was like, you know what? Fuck buttons. I'll be right. I'll wear a bloody t-shirt instead.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't want to rile people up too much about the COVID thing, but I think what I'm noticing in society is people, there's a middle ground being settled upon more. People in the beginning, they were very, very divided. You were either in one camp or the other for the most part.
Exactly.
But but now I see this kind of softening where both sides are kind of taking each other into consideration, and it's I think that's nice. I think that's nice.
Yeah, like acknowledging that somebody thinks differently, like it's this thing. Like I love seeing people have when they have different views, but they have like an understanding and respectful discussion about it. It's like, okay, I believe this. This is why I believe this for my own reasons, and then so the other person will go, yeah, I respect that. It's just that I believe it for these reasons. And I think you brought up the other day this idea of like, almost like a personality, and then like a kind of outer personality. If you, I don't know if you want to explain
like
that a bit further.
A complex, yeah. So I was telling Kai about the idea of a complex, which is essentially they have like a viral quality to them. They're kind of like mental and emotional viruses. And that's not necessarily to say that they're bad, because there's a lot of good things that transfer. But what they can do is they can hijack your personality. You see it with like really woke people. Their own personal opinions get lost and they get consumed by the complex of wokeness. And so
it's like they're a vessel.
Yeah, they're a vessel. Yeah, they become a vessel for something else. And then they lose touch with that sort of softer inner truth, which is always more individual. You can tell when somebody's connected to their inner truth because it doesn't come out in these like black and white binaries. There's a softer personal experience which kind of ebbs and flows, which may in some points agree with somebody's complex, but it's happy, just as happy to differ as it is to agree, and there's that kind of fluidity rather than this very rigid, COVID bad, COVID good, this good, this bad, these people, nasty people, these people, the best people, and it's this very...
Yeah.
It's very compelling when you don't know yourself to get sucked into these things, because I think they serve a purpose in they try to meet your needs, but they're in an incomplete fashion. If a lot of people who struggle to express themselves find themselves taken over by a complex that gives them a sense of righteousness and a sense of right and wrong, and these people are the good people and these people are the bad people, and then they're raging against the bad people, but actually what they're doing is they've just got a venue to express what the energy underneath that they need to express. So they kind of that whole thing of like a deal with the devil. It can be kind of have that angle to it where there's an unsatisfied need, and so they kind of take on this thing which may or may not be in their best interest, and then it sort of expresses through them and removes a part of themselves in a way until they kind of get themselves back.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I've always found, I don't know if there's a particular term for it, but like when I was younger, I never really got into like cliques or like I was never in any particular group. I always had my head down. I just got on with the work and I would observe things, and I would observe like dynamics between people and the differences. I don't want to make it out as if I'm like it's a narcissism thing. It's just that I was trying to understand what people were doing and why they were doing it. Like, for example, like I never got into a physical fight. I never got into that because I didn't find any reason to, and I found that if anyone did on occasion like try and put me in a headlock in school, I wouldn't fight back. I'd ask them, why are you doing this? Like a nerd. Because I remember I was in class once, and there was this kid who I kind of got along with, but he was one of the sporty ones, right? And he got all the girls, chiseled jaw, that kind of thing. And there was one moment where like a bunch of girls came in the class, and I was just stood in like the little alley bit between all the desks, and he grabbed me and put me in a headlock, and he started like giving me like a knuckle abrasion on my head, and I'm like, I just said to him, I was like, what are you doing? Why? And he was like, oh, and I'm like, why are you doing that though? It hurts. So it was like, oh, but you don't like it though. You don't like it. And I'm like, no, not really. And he dropped me after that because I wasn't like, falling into that thing of, oh no, don't hurt me. I was just like, why though?
Yeah.
Because I had, like I'd formed main friendships and stuff, people that you actually trust, and then there were people who I'd consider more like an acquaintance, I guess. Like I like I say, I used to just sit in class, I used to doodle, I used to draw, because I get the work done and I just ask the teacher, can I draw something? That was again a way to express myself, I think, because I was never that, I guess, outgoing. I don't know if that's the right word. There must be something deeper in the terms of meaning of that, but like
introverted.
Yes. So like I would doodle, and this guy would come over, and he was a lovely guy. But it goes back to that whole thing of like a what would you call it? A complex, where he was lovely on his own. He'd come over and he would say, "What are you doing?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm just drawing this. Would you like to have a look?" And he would have a look at it, and I'd say, "Oh, would you like to have a go?" And we'd have a little chit chat. We'd get to know each other. We'd have that bond. But then he'd go away and he'd come back in a group form with like a ringleader, or whatever. And he just turned into a bit of a prick. And he like there wasn't a connection anymore.
Sort
exactly.
of took over. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember you can tell in a way somebody's true feelings through like their eyes, I've noticed. So like he was, at the side being like, yeah. And I'm looking at him dead in the eye, like, trying to figure him out, like what we just had a conversation, man, like what's happening
That's
here,
sad,
like,
isn't it?
and you can see the kind of unnerved kind of twitch of like, oh, I don't really want to be doing this, but like I don't want my other friend to feel yeah and that was something I used to do at such a young age, and it hasn't stopped. Like a lot of the time, even though I express myself more in other ways, like that's always a thing that I do still, is I observe more than anything. Like I like to figure things out before I put myself in that arena, and it was just such a fascinating thing. My teachers at parents' evenings used to tell my parents with the concern, they were just like, he doesn't talk much. Is he okay? Is life at home fine? And they were like, well, yeah, he's all right. Is he doing his work? And the teacher would go, well, yeah. And my mum just goes, well, then we don't have an issue then. It just cut her off, But I like observing, and you kind of see that kind of viral thing. You see it overtake people, and you're trying to figure out that true, like what the true version of them is. The one that you just connected with, And
it's that thing of, there's like group viruses, as you probably noticed, where the complex of the group, it's like sometimes it's like you need to allow yourself to be infected to join in a certain group. And it's if you don't become infected in that, then people are like, oh, I'm going to exclude you from this group. Just kind of, it's kind of sad, really. Like if you've got a bunch of woke friends, you need to become infected by the woke complex to actually sustain those friendships. Yeah, and I'm not to say that that's necessarily bad, because I think a lot of that's just general functioning in the society to walk around and meet people in England. You probably have to, and sort of be around in public and stuff. You probably have to be infected to a certain degree by the English values of how to present yourself and how to, you can't go full animal on the streets and have people accept you and appreciate you.
You can't walk
maybe
around
sometimes.
You can't walk around like a crab with your shirt off. It's just like,
exactly.
Look at me.
Exactly.
Give me kibble.
Yeah, exactly. And there's certain bandwidths, and we kind of, it's a part of life, so it's not necessarily an inherently bad thing, but those things do limit us. So we have to sort of be aware of how they limit us and really decide of, like, do I want this? How long? And do I want to take it? When do I want to have it on, and when do I want to take it off? You know.
Exactly. It's like, are you familiar with like the Ship of Theseus? That whole thing.
No, I'm not.
So the Ship of Theseus is this idea that if you have the Ship of Theseus was a big wooden ship, right? And over the course of time, the planks would rot, and it's this idea that if you replace a rotten plank with a new one, you fix the ship, right? But at the end of it all, if you have completely replaced every rotten plank with new fresh ones, is it the same ship? Right? It's like, is the collection of rotten planks, is that the old ship? Is this collection of new ones the new ship, or is it the same ship? And it's a fantastic thought experiment, because if you kind of look it up and look through it in more detail, it's really fascinating. But like you say, it's this idea of like, if you become a little too infected, you kind of lose yourself, and you become more of a vessel for that thing than you are you.
Yeah.
And then you start, some people in that case, they'll lose their old friends, because they'll be like, you're not the same person that I was friends with. You're just, you're trying to less impart knowledge and more like force me to do something. It's like these people lose parts of themselves, and I don't know. It's just fascinating, but kind of weird to watch in a way.
It is.
I don't know.
And it's such a balance as well, because you do need a certain level of it, because it helps you to operate in society. Though I think if you imagine the image of the wise old man, I think what's so brilliant about the wise old man is, the archetype of it, the image of it, is what he has cultivated, which is, he knows the rules of society, and he's built his persona in a way which is stripped back, but it operates with society as efficiently as he needs it to, and there's enough space for him to express himself around that. It's this kind of idea, if you think of Gandalf, he knows, he goes to see the high elves, and he knows he knows how to act and how to address everybody, and he goes and speaks with the kings, and he goes to speak with the hobbits, and his personality allows for all of those engagements. But then you see his cheeky little smile, and he's having fun, and he's setting off the fireworks, and I think really, as you age, if you age gracefully, that's what you do, is you develop a personality which is able to engage with life in all of its different forms, in all the different ways that you need it to, but it's stripped back enough that you have space to then be a goofball and to express your soul and that sort of purity from within.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea that, like you say, like Gandalf, is that he slots in nicely to, like, everyone respects him. He knows to respect them. It's a very... It's what I wish the world was now, if I'm honest. I wish everyone was a Gandalf. Or they had that feeling of like, I can express myself without feeling like I'm doing wrong, or like, and I can understand and respect everyone, and there's nothing is a war, and I find that so fascinating. There are very few people in the world who are like that, and that's why I love talking to old people, right? I love doing, like, my Nana Dot. She's the most wonderful person. She's like 92, 93, and her own words to me when I asked her back in like May of 2020, when I asked her how do things feel at the moment, and she says, one foot in front of the other. And I'm thinking, you're vulnerable to this kind of stuff, whatever, and all that stuff, and she just doesn't care. She goes, right, I'm living my life. I've lived a great life. I'm just gonna go on and be there when people need me. I know that I can trust other people because there's a mutual respect, and she's so like she lives in the present moment so much, and I kind of envy that, the ability to do that. Because with the way things are now, it's and just in general, it is very hard to kind of find that kind of path where you can just intake things, but at like a healthy level, But yeah, she's so lovely. We saw her at Christmas, and she's just, because she's hard of hearing at the moment, so you do have to kind of speak up and be a little more focused.
Yeah,
but like she remembers everything with such great detail. It just takes her a while to do it. So she'll be like, and she's very northern as well. She's like very Leeds. So my auntie Kirsty will say to her, "Oh, so we went to a restaurant, didn't we, Nana?" And she goes, "Did I? Oh, I did. Oh yes, oh yes." And it's so sweet. And so I love talking to old people because they've got such a rich perspective on life. They've lived through so many things. Like even at like a bus stop or something, I'll get chatting with like an old man, and he'll tell me like stories about fishing or whatever. Like, and even some things that I don't even I could not even grasp if I wanted to try to. But it's just when you watch somebody talk with such purpose, you don't even need to know what they're talking about. You just learn it as they're speaking to you. And with old people, that is incredibly, incredibly evident.
I have a great respect for old people who manage to hold on to themselves as they aged. I do become frustrated with old people who've kind of become, their identity has become consumed by the limitations of the world. The pessimistic old person is something I really, really struggle with, because I find this, it's like they've let their soul die in a way, and they've I know the limitations of society, and you just got to face what it is, and there's no space for any creativity, and that I find that very difficult. But the old people that I really respect are the old people that remained people. It's like I've been going through my life, and I've been learning, and I've been growing, and nothing stops me growing. And there are things that I've had, limitations that I've had, and I've overcome them, and some of them I've accepted some of them, and I don't know, they've developed, and they've kept on developing. Yeah. And they've remained. I think my biggest frustration is with the old people that are the same people they were when they were 20, and they just kind of gave up on growing, and they're just kind of calcifying as the years go on. I find that quite challenging. Word.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I like I said, I love like the wiseness, you get from some people. Because like I said, they'll just tell you stories that you don't even need to connect with. And I think just kind of, it's that kind of very bare bones thing that you're hearing. Less about the details and more so just like, this person has been through certain things. They've learned, like you say, they've grown from it. And you see that journey. You see that journey as they tell you what they've been doing. And I really respect that, because I think everyone needs to evolve as they go. Like you say, people get stuck at the age of like 20 or something, and like they just kind of give up and go, right, no, I'll be doing this for the next 40 years. There's a, not to take away from the gravitas, but there's a SpongeBob quote that Squidward says, when he's in a job, and he's like, look, this is how it works. You cook the food, I take the food, we do this for 40 years, and then we die. Got it? I'm just like, yeah, but also, be a bit more adventurous. I know it's hard. Like you say, there's, that kind of, like you were talking about when people operate in England, for example, there is an element of like, you have to be, well, not all the time, but there's like kind of prim and proper. You have to do this, you have to do that. You have to speak in a certain way. You have to dress yourself in a particular way and all this. And there are moments where like I'm very ground level with it now. Like if my hair is a bit messy, right, I kind of analyze the situation. I go, right, am I going to be impressing anyone? No. Do I feel comfortable with the way I am? Yeah, it's all right. I don't have to worry about it then. And if somebody goes, oh, we need to sort that out, I'll go, right, well, that's your problem and not mine.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's not an issue for me. It's an issue for your reputation. You don't want people thinking, oh, I'm with this person who is unkempt, right? It's to feed your ego, not to help me in my own situation. I'm comfortable with that. You know?
And the exciting thing is when you see all of that stuff is mostly it's about feeding your ego. You know, if you start acting like a deranged lunatic,
yeah,
then there might be consequences that extend your own ego and people's general sense of you. But when you see, for the most part, it's about your own ego, you get to have control over that.
Yeah.
And for me, and you get to choose what you like and what you don't like. So, for example, with me, I almost always wear all black. And it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. It was something that I happened upon. I would choose clothes that I liked, and they would always be black. And it's not like in a gothic or sort of emo or whatever way. It's in a very utilitarian. I have like nylon coats and walking boots and cargo pants and stuff, and I really, really like it. And it's a very shocking look, and it does, I think, in many ways push up against the cultural norms. But it's to myself. It's a statement to myself about my values. And I'm choosing to be confrontational in certain ways. I'm not dressing sort of lightly, casually. I'll wear a green jumper and my blue jeans and my trainers. It's no, I'm doing something that I feel is quite striking. But I'm making the choice. I'm making the call. And it's how do you respond to the external expectations that I think you can get to have a really conscious choice. Because it's not, I wouldn't say it was outlandish. It's very stripped back in a way, but it has this combination of utilitarian but also quite impactful. And I don't know, I value that, and it's nice to play with that, I think.
Yeah, because I remember when we went up, we walked up a mountain back in December. It was December, wasn't it? When we came over. So. I can't remember what the place was called. It was Sutton Bank, maybe.
Sutton Bank, yeah.
We all sat, when we got to the top, after a lot of, like, I'll admit, a lot of false summits, which I remember you telling me was just like, so it's just keep going. Let's just keep going. When we got to the top and we sat on that little bench and we looked out over, like, the kind of fog-soaked, land. I remember you said something, and we had a chat about this. About, like, if you didn't have to go anywhere, you didn't have to worry about money, you didn't have to worry about eating, like looking a certain way or whatever.
Yeah, as if you were a literal immortal.
Yes.
Like, you didn't have to sleep or whatever. You didn't get cold.
You were like, imagine how much you could do, how far you could go, and, like, how long you could enjoy certain things if you didn't have to worry about any of that. Like, and I found that so... It was so thought-provoking, though, because I was just like, yeah, a lot of things don't really tarnish the possibility, but, like, they get in the way. Like, there's, like, a mental schedule. Like, you've got, okay, right, I've got to make sure I eat. Okay, so that's, like, an hour of my day gone. I could have been going out on a walk and learning about, like, a new flower or, like, I don't know, like I feel like that some days more from, like, I don't know what you would call it, like I'm very, on some days, like when I want to get some work done, I'm very, like, material. I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I have that, need to make sure I have this. Like, in the morning, we'll wake up, we'll brush teeth, whatever, we'll get a shower, and, like, some days it'll get to, like, 11 o'clock, and I have this, like, drowning feeling in me. I'm like, I've just lost half my day. But what have I done? I've, like, brushed my teeth, made sure my health has stayed the same.
Yes.
And this, I'm just like, did I really? Okay, I guess I have to. I don't know what that would be called though. Is that kind of a material lifestyle? I mean, I'm not always like that, but in some days,
I
don't
don't
know.
know. It's just, I think it's just quite interesting to look at your life through that lens, because it kind of makes you evaluate your life. And I think it also makes you evaluate that stuff that you do, that's the brushing the teeth, the eating the food, the getting a shower and all that stuff. Because I think we minimize that. And then I think we subconsciously become at war with that. It's a frustration. It's a thing I've got to keep up with.
Yeah.
But I think that stuff can be just as much of a thing to enjoy and to appreciate as anything else. And I think just imagining yourself as this immortal walking the earth, not needing anything, and what I envision anyway is I would just enjoy things. I'd just walk around and I'd soak things in and I'd appreciate things, and it's and then I go, okay, why am I not doing that now? Just because I've got to brush my teeth and go for a shower and have breakfast and cook food. Why am I not already doing that on some level?
Yeah, like, I just think when we sat up there, like, it was such a freeing experience. Like, we were just like, we're on top of a massive hill, right? We're above most of the clouds. We don't have to worry about anything, like, and I mean, we stayed up there for like a couple of hours, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's the gliders going round.
Yeah, and it was just so fun because everything was like, everything felt very minimal. It was like there's the sky, there's a way down, the sun's over there, and the moon is on the other side. Like the sky was cut in half, right? One side was blue, one side was orange, and it kind of made me forget all of those little woes, I think, in that moment. Like, of course, when that's the only thing you're thinking about, certain like woes and like problems they do feel like the end of the world sometimes. But I fully believe that human beings have a right to emote. You get people who, when they see somebody crying, they won't be supportive. They'll go, "What you crying for? Stop being silly." And it's like, you need to
it'll be all right.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, but you're not in their brain. You don't know about like all the stress they've gone through, if like they've gone through this before. And like, I'm very defensive of other people as well. If somebody ever does that to like a friend, I'm like, look, I don't do it in an aggressive way, but I'll just be like, look, they've been through a lot. Let's just let them process it their own healthy way. But like, like we say, going back to how, like if you brush your teeth and stuff, and it's just like, oh, I could be doing something right now, or like, oh, I don't want to do that. I remember so well at the age of like 16 or 17, when I was living back home with my mum. Pardon me. I had like a very small little room. That was a tautology. I had a small room, and like the little corner shop was about a mile down the road, right? 5 minutes walk. And I got up really late. I slumped out of bed, and I'm thinking, I need something to eat. There isn't anything in the house. Do I want to walk for 5 minutes to go to the shop to get something? And I was in such like an annoyed mindset. I was like, I can't be bothered. And my mum's like, Kai, it's 5 minutes down the road. I'm not driving you there. But, it's like this thing of like, it's like, what would be the word? Like, scale or like perspective, like scale, I'd say. Like, you zoom out on it and you're like, look, 16-year-old me, you can just get out of bed, go do that and solve your problem. But it is all about like what the brain is doing in that moment in time. A lot of the time your brain isn't rational when you're upset or angry. I mean, there's science behind that, but I'm sure there's also like, I guess, a spiritual side to it as well. And like you're kind of trying to work things out. Everything's like compartmentalized. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we become accustomed to the general soup of emotions that we're in. I think on a physiological level as well. I think there's a thing called being a rageaholic, and I haven't properly looked in nor studied this, but as far as I am aware, and from what I can understand, that they've studied that people can become so dependent upon being angry that they actually become addicted to the feelings of being angry. So then they end up feeling angry all the time. There's certain chemicals in the body, the cortisol, the this, the that, and the psychology of it. And I think that's true of any emotional state that you're in habitually. It becomes a kind of all-consuming soup of emotions, whether that's positive or negative emotions. And I think the only reason that we actually end up in one of these soups of emotion is for a genuine reason to begin with. If you were feeling, if you're in a place where you have this soup of emotions, which is boredom and, you know, pessimism and stuff, you probably had experiences that genuinely warranted that. But then the problem is like you say, where it becomes this all-consuming thing where going down to the shops becomes another excuse for this pessimism. And it's like, dude, you know, at that point, it's just, it's not the outside affecting inward, it's the inside affecting outward. And I've been thinking a lot about how I think it's important to move into a better emotional state from two perspectives, from a where you stand and then moving forward, if that makes sense. So you're feeling bored or you're feeling frustrated. Let that frustration amplify so that the emotion of it turns into, say it's frustration, you're like, ugh, because boredom is like a mild frustration, really.
Yeah.
And then let it amplify and get to anger and like, and then you get the impetus to go, fuck it, I'm going to walk to the fucking shop and I'm going to grab it. And you can go from the inside outwards and you can kind of push through that state into a sort of healthier state.
Yeah.
But then I think the other way that is good as well is to just kind of, for a moment, drop where you're at and just try to bring yourself into a state that you'd like.
Yeah.
So, for example, I'm just going to soak in something that's nice. I'm feeling bored and pessimistic and frustrated. Do you know what? I'm just going to let myself soak in something that's nice. And I think you need both of those to kind of orient yourself. Because if you always push forward with the feeling you get, you kind of wear yourself out and you kind of get lost. You don't know where you're going. But if you just try to get yourself into this positive state or whatever, and you ignore where you're at, you kind of don't know how to get from A to B, and there's there's a disingenuousness. You kind of become fractured. Have you ever had that thing where you say, now I'm gonna like have a nice time, and not all of you's on board, and so half of you's like woohoo, and then there's like this build up of this resistance, and then you snap back, and you're like, fuck, it's now I feel even worse.
It's like part of your brain is just like, okay. Yeah, it's like part of your brain is just like, okay, right, yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good. Let's go forward, right? Let's set the train going, right? The train's going, chugging away, and then the part of your brain on the back just goes, I'm just gonna put this big elastic band on the back of the train and attach it here. It can extend for quite a while, right? It can extend for quite a while. So, okay, cool, yeah, right, okay, right, yeah. If you put that on the caboose, that's all good. All the passengers are on, all the serotonin's in the brain right now. We're gonna get off to Pleasure Station. And we'll keep going. That elastic band just keeps stretching and stretching and stretching, right? Either of two things are going to happen. Either the train flies back and hits the station it was currently at, or that elastic band is going to get so taut that it is going to flick and that entire train is going to fly into the sun, right? Yeah. And it's just like, you need to make sure that both parts of your brain are in on it before you even set off. That unsuredness or unsurety, I can't what the word is, like that can be so detrimental to any progress. You've always got a little bit of like, am I? No, like I know a leap of faith is healthy in some cases, but like, it, you know, if you jump off a large ledge and haven't quite figured out if you're actually attached, you know, you will die. Take a second, take a break, but still have that goal in mind. Wow, that was the most like
that's right, isn't
prophetic thing I've ever
said. I love it. I love it. And it is that thing, isn't it, of you need the goal and you need to keep moving towards the goal, but you don't want to be like a bulldozer and trash yourself, and then
Yeah.
end up weeping at the ruins that you've left behind you because you so were unattuned to the reality around you and the reality of how you're actually feeling that you just you just messed yourself up. And I'm really trying in my life right now to become accustomed to a general positive state in my body, because I realized I've got a lot of distrust for positivity. I think with my family, they have a suspicion to positivity and excitement and joy. They see it as something dangerous. So then I end up with that thing. So I'm being happy and silly, and they're like, why are you doing that? They've got this sort of angle to it. So I've really been working at trying to put myself in that state of positivity and allow it to come through, and just to let myself get used to it. And if I'm freaking out, it's like, it's okay, I can freak out about this and kind of adapt to that state, but in a gentle way, where when it's too much, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to force myself, Otherwise it's going to create that elastic band effect again, like you said.
Yeah, like of course you have people, I think, that they're afraid of, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but they're conscious and have a little fear towards like somebody letting go, being like, oh yeah, I'm good. I think I'm good with this. Like, yeah, I've been through that before, and it's just like, maybe don't. It's like, yeah, but everyone's life is different. I will acknowledge that, but also be like, yeah, I feel good to do this. I'm happy. Yeah, it's shouldn't be happy. There's other stuff going on. It's like, yeah, but that's going on for you, not for me.
And I think they associate happiness with danger. That's what I've been paying attention to. They see it as something, if you get your hopes too high, something bad will happen and you'll end up really hurt. Or if you're too positive and you enjoy something too much, you'll not be aware of the dangers and you'll do something that gets you, damaged or whatever.
Hold on, I think my audio's died. Hold on. Sorry.
Uh-oh.
Damn these headphones.
Cut that part out. Sorry about that. A few technical difficulties, but we're back. Kai.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let's go.
Okay, so
from before, we don't have control over technology sometimes. It does its own thing.
Flies off the rails. But yeah, so we were talking before about how, like, you can go from being in that pool of emotions of being angry, and you stop for a second to try and reevaluate how to get to your goal with a healthier mindset. Like, you can choose to be a little happier either through going to do something that you'd like to do that can kind of, level the temperature, I guess. Or, like, it can be other things. Like, the environment could help. You could go out for a nice walk. It could be sunny. And, like, the air can change. Like, we go out for walks, and because we're in such a rural area, like, there's so many nice fields and open areas, it really makes you feel good. Or somebody else can say something funny or like, cheer you up with something. And it brought me back to, like, especially, like I say, I used to observe things as I grew up, right? Watching my little sisters go through each section of their life, right? There'd be a moment where my littlest sister would get into a big huff, right? She'd be very angry, arms crossed, little face scrunched up. So I'm angry, right? That would last for about maybe 10 minutes before her little mind got bored of it, and my mum made a funny joke or gave her something fun to have or to eat or whatever. And there'd be like this little kind of like trying to hang on to the anger, right? A little like smushed smile. And I always found that really fascinating. That does happen in some cases. You could be really angry and you simmer down a little bit and your body is still trying to hold on to it. And somebody can help you out and help you out of the rut, but your mind is still in that kind of like defensive state of, no, I've made a stand here. I'm angry and I want people to know it. But then you kind of come back to reality,
But I do find it peculiar because that anger is always reflective of a real need.
Yeah.
I'm very I'm very critical of people who think that you should just throw away anger.
Yeah.
It drives me insane when I see it a lot in the spiritual field. Anger's bad. Get rid of anger. And I'm just like,
it's like you need it. You need it to an extent.
You need it. But for me, I'm really trying to work out, how do I go through anger and get to the other side? For me, underneath anger is passion.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I want this. It has that kind of quality to it. And I think you can want something passionately, and it's like you say, going from the anger to the cheeky smile. It's like going from, I want something and I'm defensive about it, to, okay, now I feel solid in myself. Now I can just enjoy that thing. I don't have to have that defensive angle.
Yeah, it's this. I absolutely despise it as well, Harry. So you're not alone on this. It's like when somebody is like super angry, and like somebody's like, "Oh, you don't have to be angry. You shouldn't be stressed." It's like we were in London. We were on the tubes, right? To kind of, in a way, bring it back to. Not bring it back, but like to kind of bring it to like a materialistic kind of perspective. We were on the tube, and we had all this luggage, and time wasn't on our side. We had to get home, and there wasn't as much freedom as we would have liked. There was a set train, we had to get on it, otherwise we couldn't get home. We were kind of critical thinking, right? And we're on the tube, and we're ready to get off, and my thought process here, and I'm pretty sure this is just common knowledge and common decency anyway, is that you let people get off first before you get on. Unless, of course, there's nobody to get off. You let people get off first. There's these people just in front of the door, and they're expecting us to move, but we're evidently getting off the tube, right? So we come home, we're all flustered and whatever, and I remember telling somebody about this, and they said, "Oh, don't be stressed." And when I say
that really helped.
When I say that, like, my outside was very much like, and my inside was like,
you fucking bastard.
And I was just like you can't just not do. You can't. There is no switch that just allows you to turn it off, right?
And people have a distrust of emotions. People in the Western culture are not very emotionally advanced. I think it's really fascinating. I was having this conversation where I think in many of the other cultures throughout history, care was taken to develop some form of psychological, emotional balance. And in our culture, we're pretty immature at that. We got this whole science rationalism thing, and it's very interesting, and it's evident that what we've got going, there's a lot of power to that, considering that we've got this weird things in front of us that are allowing us to have a conversation across the country, and as many people as want to experience this on planet Earth will be able to access. I'm not shitting on the West, but emotionally we really don't have a very good understanding of it. And I think if you take every emotion as something that is valuable and is trying to communicate something important to you, but may not necessarily be displaying in a way that is the best or the healthiest, then I think we have a lot better relationship with emotions than this kind of like happiness good, get rid of everything else kind of mentality. I'm like, what? No. Yeah, you need to experience
these things. Like I live on, I guess, my partial, spirituality in terms of like, because I'm not as deep into it. Not because I don't want to be. I think it's just because I haven't.
It's not your priority. It's not.
Yeah, that's the kind of word. So my thing is that, like, say if my partner Emily, she's having a bit of a bad day, right? Obviously, lots of little things will pile up that wouldn't usually anger a person, and when you are kind of prickled, I think the prickled is the way I like to kind of explain it and visualize it. You get kind of like muscle twinges, and you just like everything annoys you. I say to her, in a calming way, nothing, because I hate people who are patronizing. Absolutely hate patronizing people.
Oh, that's sweet.
You're dead. But like, I say to her, and I live on this principle myself, that if you have a bad day today, right, you can work through that. Let your body kind of get through the anger and the emotions that you're actually feeling, so that you can have that can be your release, and your catharsis can come from how if you have a bad day one day, tomorrow will be good. But even if it isn't good, it builds up. Right, that's kind of my belief. Is even if the next day isn't good, because you're having so many bad days, you will appreciate the good day more because you haven't had it very often, or you haven't been able to have it for a while. Again, the same thing I kind of felt when I got to go see my parents again, or come to see you. Because we were without it for a while. It was nice to have back, and I feel that's the same way with emotions. Is that like negative emotions as there'd be known things like anger, sadness, depression, all this. Like, they don't need to be swept under the rug and like very kind of patronizingly told, oh, you shouldn't have to do that, or not so much that, so you shouldn't do that. Why are you doing this? Why not just, pick up the reins and get going? You need to feel these emotions. They need to be there to be felt.
I think it shows such an immaturity in our perception of emotions to think that we are doing it. And I am very deep into psychology and Freudian, Jungian, Adlerian, and spiritual, and all these different elements that all kind of add up together to build my understanding of psychology. And what you learn is there's a lot of stuff going inside that you're not consciously in control of.
Yeah.
You can direct it, and you can build a relationship with it, and when you improve the relationship with that stuff, it improves the quality of your life. But people act despite a whole lifetime's worth of evidence that they're in control of their emotions. And I'm like, that is the most bullshit thing that I've ever heard, because you have this prefrontal cortex, this part of your brain which allows you to modulate the emotions. It allows you to suppress or to enhance or to change your perspective or a whole range of different things, or to lead yourself into a different feeling.
Yeah.
And it allows you, it's like this rudder that can angle you in different places. But the content within is something that you have to build a relationship with. It's not something you have free will. It's just when I hear people and they're like, and it's about being happy. Be happy, happy. And I'm just like, that's not, you just so have missed the mark. You've so misunderstood also the importance when people regularly ignore their negative emotions, they get fucked over so incredibly. Is sad, because sometimes there's negative emotions, but they're also trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
I've seen spiritual people and just people in general. They said like, oh, well, I thought this person seemed dreadful, but then I tried not to judge them. And then so I spent a bunch of time with them or dated them or whatever. And then it went really badly. And I'm like, oh, what a surprise. Yeah. You had this internal realization. Your instincts were telling you this is a bad idea. You felt like a bad person for feeling like that. You went against your instincts and now you're in trouble. Well, I mean, like, that speaks for itself, really.
Yeah. And like you're saying, like when people are angry as well, and they just get told like, just be happy, like a light switch, it's just easy, just turn it off, it's fine. They're more likely to just continue being angry. It's like whenever you get like people in like a work scenario, right? Like a boss will yell at a worker being like, you're terrible at your job, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, that's really going to make me want to work harder, isn't it? Like, yeah, I've had I've had like people who've asked for work, right? from me. I do freelance like animation and all this and whatever. I've been through the ringer, right? But I'm glad I have been, because I've learnt from the mistakes. I know to kind of build a stronger defense against certain things. I know how the whole system works. I've had people who they'll ask for something from this kind of very blind perspective. They'll be like, "Oh, can I have this for free?" And I say, "Well, no, because," and I'm not angry about it. I just explained that I need, I'm like, well, I charge for my time. The effort that goes in and all this and that. And they go, "Oh, well, your art is shit." And I go, "Okay, right, let's just write this down in the book of reasons that I'll definitely be giving you free art. My art is shit."
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not going to help. If somebody is evidently feeling a certain way, or they are a certain way, adding more of the thing that they're feeling is not going to make it a positive. Like, this isn't... People need to realise, and I think this is probably something that will ring true with you, people need to realise that emotions are not mathematical. They're not just something that you can go, take that away, you'll be fine. That's not how it works.
Yeah. I know, and it's sad, people... And that's really what I want to teach people, is about understanding that stuff, and as well, because I've visited and I've learnt so many different of these different understandings of emotions and the self and our relationships and the energy within us and all these different things, and I really try to, I build it up, but then I always try to strip it back down. So I try to build up an understanding and try to get enough dexterity with what I'm working with, and then after a while I'm like, okay, how do I strip this back down to something effective? So I'm always doing this process of building up, stripping down, building up, stripping down, so that I can really have something that clicks with people on a really solid level, but is also effective, that's not plagued by this emotional reductionism that we have in our society that leads us into such chaos. And I think one of my favorite methods and ways of understanding at the moment is thinking of emotions as your instinct communicating with you.
Oh, interesting.
So this is, and I find this fascinating. So if you think of yourself, and we can go on the spiritual angle as well, but let's just stick to the biological for a second. So you've evolved over all these millions of years, and internally your instinct has developed and learned the relationships and the ebbs and flows of life.
Mm-hmm.
So you've learned what to do when a predator comes. You've learned what to do when there's prey. You've learned how to relate to members of your tribe. You've learned how to relate to people who you want to mate with. You've learned how to relate with people who you want a long-term relationship. You've learned how to relate to your parental figures. And you have all these instincts. You've learned how to relate to the environment when there's an abundance of resources, and you've learned how to relate to your environment when there's a lack of resources.
Yeah.
And there's all these different things going on internally that are instinctually embedded within you. They're embedded into your DNA, into who you are. And what emotions are is, on that deep subconscious level, they're processing the world and they're giving you information. But the problem is because we've become so dependent on this prefrontal cortex, the logical part of the mind, we've lost touch with the instinctual drives. You don't need to tell a fox to run when it sees a person.
Yeah.
Or let's say a rabbit, obviously there's city foxes. You see a rabbit. You don't need to tell a rabbit to run. Yeah. It doesn't need to logically understand that the fox is dangerous. It's just its instincts say to it, go, get away.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, like, its whole body is flooded with this sensation of go, run, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's so visceral, and they're designed in a way which make sense in and of themselves. And I think we try to override that so much. We say, oh, don't judge people. Oh, be nice to people. And I think when we try to force these instinctual things out of ourselves, we become very out of balance with the world. You say, oh, just be nice to that person. I'm like, I'm not nice to anybody unless I want to be nice. Because first of all, people can tell if it's genuine. And second of all, there's a reason why I'm instinctually not guided to be nice in that moment. So I'm going to trust that. And I instinctually am driven to be nice a lot of the time, but I just trust when I'm not.
Yeah, it's like, there've been instances where, like, I don't know, somebody has been a bit of a piece of shit, and you think, oh, okay, I don't like that person, and then somebody goes, oh yeah, but they're like your granddad, so we've got to we've got to, like, it's like, well, no, because I'm going to acknowledge that they've just said something really shit, and I'd like them to know that, and I don't have to be nice and stuff. It's just like you say, it's kind of forced upon us in some ways. Like when you're in certain environments or with certain people, it's like, oh, you must act this way, and I both understand it and don't, because I like to observe things. I like to observe things from different standpoints and whatever. But like you say about the rabbit thing, like if you like a rabbit will act on instinct, whereas like I don't know if the word normal is right, but if you say for normal logic, like a person thinking too logically, for example, if they try and put that mindset into a rabbit, the rabbit, when being chased by a fox, isn't going to go, let's have a rational conversation with this fox. I'm sure he's a delightful chap. Oh, shit, I'm being eaten.
Yeah, exactly.
No. It's just like you have to have a balance of it, I think.
And I think you are right. You need, the reason we have that prefrontal cortex, the logical mind, is because in our world there are particularities that it can be helpful to observe. If you think somebody's being atrocious, your gut instinct might be to go, fuck you, you fucking this, da, 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 da. But actually, if you get clear on it and you actually regulate your emotions, you can just either leave or you can explain simply and confidently why you're displeased. And so you still want that conscious regulation of your emotions. You don't want to become just a caveman and just but at the same time you're going with your emotions, not against them. You're you're just enhancing them.
Yeah, it's like with me personally, like whenever I'm angry, like I try not to say anything to the person I'm angry at until I've figured it out. Because you brought up the Freudian thing, and I haven't talked to I haven't. Let me rephrase it. I haven't learned too much about it, but my favorite thing about that is the Freudian slip. Right? You're probably aware of that. Is like when you're super pent up and angry, right? Your brain isn't thinking rationally. It's not like the signals aren't going where they need to be in the nice, concise manner. So you can let something out that you did not even mean to. Something that has been guarded, well kept, behind the rational thinking line. And once that breaks, something can get released and it can just make the whole thing worse. So like, like I personally like to, vent in a different way, whether it's through my art, whether it's through going out somewhere or whatever, but I've tried my best, and again, I didn't used to talk much even in my childhood anyway. I try not to say anything because it could be like, well, not incriminating, but like it won't help your credibility essentially. That's what I mean. Like like if you say something and you're just like, oh well, you like, oh your fucking hair's shit. It's just like, oh, right, well now I'm an asshole, asshole shit. But like, that's one of my favorite things. The ship of Theseus and the Freudian slip. I adore those two kind of thought process things. I love like learning about them. But it's just it's funny. It's really good because sometimes you watch it not from the perspective of somebody who has slipped up, but you're watching somebody else slip up, and you're kind of watching the way that they are acting, like their body language are tightening up a little bit, like, this. And I'm like, okay, well, you've lost credibility and the argument. Bye then.
And sometimes it can be just an innocent thing if you're like, oh my God, I just for a moment saw your internal world. With our friend Harry Gibson, loads of the time, this often comes out in mishearing things. So I'll say something and maybe I'll mumble something, or maybe I'm far away from him. And he'll repeat back to what I said. So I'll say something like, oh, I'm going to go over those. And he'd be like, your anus is square?
He does do that.
Like,
I find that like really, it's funny but really interesting. You're not in like a patronizing
what's going
way,
on in your
fun.
mind? Yeah, what is going on in your mind? In your mind, and it's so funny that his mind is just prepped for that.
Yeah, it's just like it's already there. Like the words are being like pushed out. It's like, right, go. We need that. Your anus. It's just like,
yeah.
But like. That's also something that I find interesting because my friend Tom, who also does like online content creation and stuff, he's built up such an interesting not workflow, but like kind of a mindset or an approach for meeting people, because he meets people at conventions. They'll line up to go meet him or whatever. He's kind of cemented this thing of whoever he's talking to, he just immediately assumes that they're somewhere on the autism spectrum, right? And his reasoning behind this is interesting, because when he first started doing it, he would make like a joke that he would understand, but of course people on like a different kind of spectrum of like what their mind is wouldn't get it. So he would say something like, or they would come up and be like, oh, my brother couldn't make it today. And he would like joke and be like, oh, maybe they hate me. And the guy would be like, no, they don't. Because of course everyone's mind's different, And and so he kind of has to come at that from perspective. And our friend Harry will often tell us very very often and with a confidence that he is autistic, and that's just the way he is. Like certain people like numbers and stuff like this, and I do find that really interesting that he had kind of the anus line just kind of prepped and ready to go. But it's also like the different perspectives as well. I remember when I think we'd come back from Sutton Bank that we mentioned earlier, and you and Harry were having a conversation about like why there aren't any cereal adverts on the TV anymore, and you were like, well, because it's bad for kids. And he was like, yeah, but a bowl full of milk and Cocoa Pops is a bowl full of fun, or whatever the jingle is. And you were trying to get your point across. You were like, Harry, this is why kids, they got like, it's not healthy. And he's like, yeah, but like, but this.
But Cocoa Pops. Harry's a little troll.
Yeah, I like the little moments though where that'll happen throughout college. That was always a fun thing. Yeah, Harry actually mentioned to me the other day, but I think I've known him for 7 years. Does not feel like 7 years. I feel, have you known him for longer? I feel like you've known him for longer.
It might be 8. But it's not. It's roughly the same.
But yeah, it's so interesting to see how people's minds work. And again, not in a narcissistic way. I don't want to seem like I'm kind of like, oh yes, I know exactly how it works. Yeah. So I want a bit Ian McKellen there.
Yeah, 'cause it's deep. It's deep, but you get little insights. You get little windows into people.
It is interesting, kind of how it is interesting to see how different people with their different mindsets and like approaches react to different things. So like my partner Emily, her dad Mark Stay does a podcast called The Bestseller Experiment, and he talks about how to like how to write things properly, and like you write from the heart, you write prose and all this kind of stuff, and it's really interesting. And one of the kind of character building questions that he asks are very personal ones. So it'll be like, oh, how would your character react to I don't know, missing a bus, or the Wi-Fi goes off, or like maybe they couldn't meet up with a friend today. And it's better than like, what color is your character's eyes? And that kind of builds on what we're saying before, like how different people go on with that kind of stuff.
So I want to know, Kai, how would you react to missing a bus?
I'd say I probably would have planned it prior. So I would have been like, oh, okay. Like initially, if I missed the bus, I'd go, fuck. I'd probably like kind of sigh, I'd swear at the floor a little bit, and then I would compose myself and I'd think, okay, when's the next one? Is this going to, like, I like to plan like the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
If I'm like, that bus was for a connecting train, I can probably still make it, but I like to kind of put myself in a mindset of like, okay, I don't think this is gonna work now, and I kind of prepare myself for the inevitable anger, but also the delight of like, okay, if I'm at this point now where I have options, but they couldn't all go well. I'm not quite at the anger stage yet, so I'm like, okay, if I try not to be disappointed, if it starts to come along, I can be like, okay, all right, my day isn't entirely ruined. I think I can do it. All right. That's kind of how I'd react to a missing a bus or not getting not getting on the bus. I'd have initial anger, and then I'd try and kind of like compartmentalize everything and work it all out. If it was the last bus, I would scream to the heavens.
You'd have a meltdown.
I would. Like, I was playing a VR game the other day, and these little androids, like, fall out from under a pipe, and I yelled out, fucking cunt balls. And that's probably what I would say. Like, I missed a bus once, and, like, or like, I got off at the wrong stop because I hadn't been here before, and, like, I was miles away from home, and there were no other buses, and I was like, taxi's gonna cost me 20 quid, I don't have data left on my phone, can't call anyone, I got 3% on my phone, and I just yelled like fuck at the floor, and this like old woman with her dog like was walking by a gentle pace, heard that, and then shuffled away. I was just like, I'm sorry. So that's how I'd react to missing a bus. How about you?
I love that. I think this was probably quite revealing. I think I would get consumed by an overwhelming sense of pessimism and life is shit.
Yeah.
And I would kind of get stuck in this feeling of nothing ever goes right for me. And then I kind of just like brush past it and then go for a smoke.
Yeah, I mean, again,
smoke my pipe and then listen to some music or something.
Again, I think that acknowledgement of the anger is very healthy. I think it's like, it's like, okay, that's happening. Okay, it's done. It's like having a really, really like strong brick like shit. It's just like, let's get past. There we go. Fine.
Do you know what, as well, is it like answering your question, which has been very revealing for myself, is I think I've realized how much I want to liberate from my sense of this deep pessimism and this deep sadness about life, which I think is something I've inherited from family. It's something that's been kind of passed down through the lines, and it's almost this woundedness of expect the worst kind of thing, and I think in that moment when you miss a bus, that is very
it's just like, oh god, they told me about
failures.
Like, and especially I think that can also have such an impact as well if like your day so far has been full of little tiny like prick kind of moments like that, where it's just like it feels like, I don't know, like if you kind of feel itchy, it's like itchy anger. It's just like, my god, one thing is just gonna like, if that cone isn't fully in line with the road, I will lose my shit. But on a normal day, it's just like, cone's wonky, I'll go sort that out.
But it's interesting when you get wrapped up in those small things of, it's such an art. I think if you're in an extreme emotional state, it can weirdly sometimes be easier to get through it because there's so much energy behind it.
There is,
You're
yeah.
just like, I'm weeping or I'm angry, and then you get through it. But for example, with today, I was woken up by my uncle because I'd done a Zoom interview and I'd changed the name from my grandparents' name to my name, which is now Harry Helsing.
Yeah.
So my uncle came down. My grandma was on a call thing with her church, and it says Harry Helsing still. And he said, "Oh, can you change the name? It's very embarrassing for your grandma because it says Harry Helsing," and I was just like, just the first thing to be woken up for, and it was like it felt kind of just like, oh yeah, that's my name, and like, why should they be embarrassed by my name kind of thing?
It goes back to that whole thing of like it's not my problem. It's like your reputation, your ego is being harmed for like no particular reason. Like you try and rationalize these people, you're just like, yeah, but why would that matter? Oh, but it's a family thing. So, yeah, but it shouldn't matter at all. Like in the grand scheme of things.
And it's sad as well when I think my family and my mother's side, they have a bit of a pattern of degrading you slightly. Like they don't even realize they're doing it, but there's almost this energy of disappointment and degrading for every little thing that doesn't approve, that they don't feel approval for.
Yeah, and it's like
quite wearing down.
Yeah, and like there is an absolutely fantastic little art piece that I remember seeing once, like a little, not quite a comic strip, but like a long image. I'll try and find it somewhere. I don't know if you want to put it in like a link on Odyssey or whatever. But there's an image of like the generation thing throughout a family, right? So like the elderly person says to their son or daughter, "You're terrible. You'll never live up to this kind of stuff." So then their emotions get passed on to their children. And it's like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that because it's disappointing, this. And then the last one, and I live by this so much now, it simply says, break the cycle. The parent with a bunch of arrows in their back sat on fire says to their kid, "I'm proud of you."
Yeah.
And it's just like, you need to break that cycle. Like, I couldn't care less if I don't put my shoes on fast enough or like, like a speck of dust is on something. It's just like, that's not my problem. I'm comfortable with that. It's like other people's ego being pushed onto you. That's like, I'm not really a fan of that kind of thing.
And I think it makes me sad how it's normalized within our culture to be slightly antagonistic and almost be a slight enemy, oppositional with each other.
Yeah,
I'm never particularly like that with my friends. I have moments where it's like a conflict and I'm frustrated with somebody about something. And I'm like, look, we need to address this thing. And then it can, all the emotions get up and stuff. But my general way of speaking to people, there's a sense of respect. I listen. And it's sad how normalized it is for people to be generally slightly rude, slightly dismissive, slightly degrading, and I think that slightness of it is almost more invasive and worse than when it's overt, because when somebody's being overtly mean, like, "Oh, you fucking," it's just, you just brush it off like that's a person who hasn't got control of their emotions. But
exactly.
When somebody has that continuous, gradual, "Yeah, well, Kai, you weren't really that good at that thing," or, I mean, I don't know. I don't think you need to be bothered about that. Like that very slight kind of like, you almost imperceptible sometimes when it's just brushing through life, and then you're like, that stuff really sticks in. That really absolutely soaks into your skin. And
especially like at the beginning of a day, like the start of a day can dictate how the rest of your day is going to go. Again, if one bad thing happens, your brain is kind of on the fritz. It's just like, should I set the table for disappointment today so we can be there, or should I? I'll keep some optimism, and then something else happens. However, So like I try to kind of make sure. Well, not make sure. Like if I'm angry, I'll be angry. I need to let that happen. But like in the morning, I'll try to lead myself down a positive path. Like a sweet thing that Emily and I do is if something in the morning doesn't go well, I say, okay, we've got a downy uppy day, right? Which means that we have like a bit of a rough start, but we'll enjoy the rest of the day. And the same thing the opposite way, we'll have an uppy downy day. So it could be like, we've had lots of fun early on, we're a bit tired now, let's just go to bed. We'll rest. Yeah. We'll kind of get ready for the next day. And that is something that I think it's hard to do. It's hard to get into because, but it is kind of healthy. But like you say, when people do this in a non kind of brushed off way, like you say, if somebody's angry, you chalk that up to they're angry. They're kind of volatile at the moment. They're just kind of they're exploding, right? It's out of control. But like you say, when somebody says something like that in a hushed tone, kind of as if they're trying to connect with your soul, it's just like, even if it takes a second, it's just 2 words. It's like that sticks with you, and it's like
it really does.
And then you start overthinking certain things, and it's just like you start like laser focusing on things that didn't really matter before. That's why a lot of like body image thing comes from nowadays. Somebody could very simply just say like, oh, like, I don't know, like, oh, you're buying a lot of snacks today. Oh, no wonder you need new trousers. And it's just like, it's like, oh, cool, thanks. Now I've got like body issues. And then you go, oh, I'm angry. And then they go, oh, what are you upset for? It's just a joke. I said, yeah, but it hurt.
Yeah. And I think it's something little spoken about how big those subtleties affect people. One of the things my family do is they leave notes in the house, and so they put up if there's and so we've got the carpets pulled up at the moment, so there's a floorboard, so it's a lot louder walking through. And so one of them puts this big sort of be quiet like, and it got to a point where I just ripped them down because I was like, look, I know. First of all, I know. Second of all, it's just a constant negative reminder every time I walk past it, this be quiet, like in this like bold capital letters. And when I put my notes on the wall today to say, essentially, I'm doing a podcast, can we just have a bit of quiet? I was like, recording in progress, please may I have some quiet? Thank you. Smiley face. Because I'm like, can we not just have that level of respect?
Exactly.
What is with this normalized disapproval and it's and I get disapproval can sometimes be a good tool to just be able to say, look, man, like what's going on there? Like I'm not cool about this. And that's fine. But when it becomes this pervasive, consistent thing where you're not able to address something directly, you just have this undertone of degradation. It's just what?
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. It's just like this scenario where you're like, why can't we just have a conversation about this? Like some people, I think, are so protective over their ego, and they're just like, oh, I can't step down to that. No, I need to make my point heard. Have a conversation? Bah, absolutely not. It's like, yeah, but that would solve the problem. It's like putting these words. I mean, not in the same fashion, but like to give some context, my partner Emily and I also make puppet shows. Right? We film those and we put them on. We love doing it. And for one of the first ones, we used Mark's like notes board, right? That he uses to write like ideas down for his writing. And part of one of the skits that we did is that we have one of the puppets write on the little board, so-and-so's idea sucks, right? Obviously nice and funny for the thing. But then like later in the day, Mark came up and he said, can I, are you done with that? Can I take that down? Because when I'm trying to write and I look over to so-and-so's idea sucks, it's a bit degrading. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, take that down. I'm so sorry, but it's just little things like that.
That's nice. That's nice that you're around people who have an attunement to that.
Yeah, and it's like they
care about that.
I can respect you enough to have a conversation with you and I can respect you enough to acknowledge what that means. You know?
Yeah.
I love that. I love when people are
nice.
in tune with things and you're like, okay, good, we're on the same level. You know, like I don't
They're
have
not
to
just dismissive.
Yeah, I don't have to go through like mental fire hoops to try and get to a place where you will understand me. Like, you know, you could explain when like the thing I hate, and hate is again a strong word. I think it's also something you mentioned the other day. When you have like a conversation with somebody, or like you're trying to explain something, and then they like reply back with just some cookie cutter like, yeah, well, I don't think that's cool. And it's just like, have you actually soaked in anything I've said?
Yes.
Does any of it make sense to you? I'm trying to get on your level here.
It's sad. It's sad, and I think when people, sometimes people just don't see it.
Yeah.
It's like you say something, and it's like whew, it just went completely over them. And I think at that point, I usually take that as a sign. If it's with somebody that I have a very close relationship with, I might try to explain and articulate what I'm trying to get across. But if it's with somebody who's in that sort of grey area, I just sort of take it as a sign of, I'll just leave them to their devices and I'll go find somebody else to articulate and communicate it with.
Yeah.
It's no fun trying to repeatedly communicate to those sorts of people to try and get something across that they're just not wired to get across.
And again, you know, you go back to that whole like infected thing from the beginning of the whole thing. You have these people who you're trying to break through that. You're trying to break through that kind of, okay, this is my lifestyle, and get through to their soul. Like I mentioned with the friend who, you know, would draw with me, but then he'd be in that group dynamic. I could see it in his eyes. And you're just like, I'm almost there. I can break through that. This can be over. This can be like, we can find a solution to this. I just need to get through to that part of you, to that part of your personality, the true you.
Man. So it's an hour and 40 minutes. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we'd like to cover before we wrap this up?
I can't really think of
Plugs,
anything.
perhaps?
That was quite a...
Plugs, if... Yeah.
Plugs are good.
It was nice. It came to a poignant pause.
And we also, like, you know, we brought it back to the beginning as well. Love when things do that.
Hell yeah. Plugs, man. Go for it.
Okay, so you can find my stuff on YouTube if you look up Kai Pai's Headbox or just Kai Pai. I do my animations on there and my Kai's Future Past project. I'm also, when I actually get around to finishing my first kind of storytime animation, that'll go up in YouTube and on Odyssey. We can like do an updated link to that when it goes up, because I really want to try out that platform. It seems really nice.
Yes.
To put on new, fresh content. So yeah,
It's
that's where you can
exciting.
find me, and that's where you can find my stuff.
Hell yeah. Oh, it's been a pleasure, Kai. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Has indeed.
And
it's been good to
check his animations out. They're good. And if you really want, pay him to do you an animation yourself. Give Kai your money so he can
give me your money, mortals.
Give him the money.
I will make your crayon drawings. Sorry,
I will do your crayon drawings. It's actually 3 crayon drawings that you just flash between. That's all of your animations.
But yeah, I've had such fun with this. Thank you so much.
It's been awesome. All right, and bye, guys.
Bye.
Woodoo, 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 woodoo. Woodoo, 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 woodoo.